David Pakman had on his show a woman who is running for Congress, I guess. And it was an interesting conversation, and it shows a lot about what it takes now in the current Republican Party to run for these positions. And largely, if you're not willing to completely speak out against Trump and you need his support, you have to like completely bend yourself around a tree in a pretzel to, capitulate to his lies pretty much, especially about the election, to stay in his good graces. And so a really good example of that is this person that David Pakman had on his show, interviews, and it yields a lot of interesting moments. So let's take a look.
We're going to be speaking with a Republican congressional candidate named Darlene Swaffer, and I think this is going to be very, very interesting for our audience. Darlene is a small business owner and is running for Congress in Florida's 22nd district. Darlene, I really appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you, David. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and it's I'm always interested in learning more about different candidates, their ideas, whether there might be, my audience is on the left, and it's always interesting to see where there might be opportunities to sort of bridge divides and work together and all of these different types of things. So let's kind of contextualize your candidacy a little bit. If I understand correctly, Michael Flynn and Roger Stone have both endorsed you. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And a few hours before our interview, you posted a picture of yourself with the former President Donald Trump, and you said it was wonderful to meet my president. Just as a sort of like gut check, right? Who's the current president of the United States?
I don't know. That's debatable. Some people feel that we had a stolen election, and that's an illegitimate president currently serving. I have my own thoughts on that, but if you look back in the last 1 year and several months, where are we as a country? I mean, we went from being energy independent to now purchasing oil from Russia and negotiating oil with Venezuela. We went from having very low inflation to having very high inflation. We got back into the Paris Accord, even though we are very responsibly a global citizen on our energy consumption.
Well, let's get to that. But Darlene, I want to hold you to who's the current president?
Well, I don't believe that the current president is a legitimate president, and we'll leave it at that.
Is Joe Biden currently the president, even if you think he's illegitimate? Is he the president?
I don't believe he is. Okay. I don't believe that is the current legitimate president.
And who is the current legitimate?
Do you see what I mean? I mean, what? Like, we live in a country where people running for Congress can't just say, I mean, first of all, we live in a world where an interviewer for someone who's running for Congress has to ask, who's the current president? And the response back isn't, what? Obviously Joe Biden. Why are you asking me that? That's so bizarre. No, the response back is, not Joe Biden. I think he's illegitimate. And then you'll see when she continues on, it gets, what's happening?
President.
I don't believe we have a current legitimate president.
Wow. So in a sense, there's no president of the U.S. right now.
I guess that's your interpretation of what I said, but okay.
Well, you tell me, I mean, is there a president?
Guys, that's the thing that so many people do whenever they have wild conspiracies, is they'll tell you their conspiracy, and then once you hear it and state it back to them, they go, if you interpreted what I said that way, okay. And it's like, I just said back to you what you just told me. What do you mean? And that's what happens when people will play clips of certain, like right-wing media figures, politicians, and they'll say, oh, that was taken way out of context. Okay, then what's the context? So you don't believe that? Oh, no, I believe that. You're trying to slander me, so.
President right now, I guess.
Well, I'd rather not answer that. How's that? Because I kind of feel like you're leading down an area of controversy that we don't have to go.
Okay, interesting.
It's controversial who the president
Let's talk about the energy
is.
independence thing, just to pick one thing. And so this, I think, will give my audience a lot of kind of insights into your campaign. The United States in 2020, which was Donald Trump's last year in office, produced as much oil as we used. And I think that's what you're signaling when you talk about being energy independent. We used a certain amount of oil and we produced an amount that matched that. Right. And in 2021, the same thing happened. We produced as much oil as we used. So can you tell me on what basis you say that we are no longer energy independent under Joe Biden?
Great point. People need to remember, just because somebody says it a million times doesn't mean it's true. And that's one thing that a lot of people who support Trump will say, one of the amazing things he did is made us energy independent, and Biden has rolled that back. And I would be curious to ask, do you know what that means? Energy independence? And as David Pakman laid out, presumably what you mean is we produced the same or more level of oil as what we consumed, or what we, went through. Even though obviously, as he's going to say later, we sell some of that oil, and so then we have to buy back from other countries oil as well. So it's not like we just produce and consume all within our country. But then if that's what you celebrated him for, are you also very complimentary of Biden for doing the same thing? And by doing, I just mean overseeing. I obviously don't think either president single-handedly caused those oil numbers.
Well,
production
actually,
numbers.
if you look at the graph of how much oil we've purchased from Russia, it's significantly more than what we were producing for ourselves. I mean, that graph was well published, and I'm happy to email that to you. But that is an inaccurate statement that you just shared. It doesn't matter how much oil we consume, we can either produce our own oil and build back our reserves, which is what President Trump did, or deplete our oil reserves and start purchasing oil from other countries, which is evident in the price of gas today. I mean, it was under $2 a gallon a year and 3 months ago. And what are we at now? $4, $5, in some cases $6 or $7. That is your evidence.
Let's get back to gas prices, and I want to really, with you, I love the clarity of the conversation where let's agree to first talk oil and then we'll talk gas. So did you know that the U.S. for decades has purchased oil from foreign countries? So under Trump, even though we produced as much oil as we used, some of the oil we produce, we export, and to make up for that, we import some oil. And under both Trump and...
This is so petty, but I hate when people do this. Right. Whenever they're listening, just, you'll see it throughout the rest of the interview. Shut up and listen to what I'm saying and then respond to it. And if every once in a while you want to go right when there's really a thing that you agree with, do it. But just going, right is so annoying. And a lot of people do this. But
Biden,
that's unimportant. I get it.
We imported oil from Russia. Did you know that?
Did you know that in the last 20 years, we had presidents in the United States that did not focus on energy independence?
So because I was talking, I know I split up his question. He said, did you know that, one of the things you're criticizing Biden for is having to import oil from other countries, Russia, Venezuela, etc. And Pakman is saying, did you know that that also was happening under Trump? And then her response is,
in producing our own oil and offshore those opportunities to other countries. Did you know that?
Well, but that's not an answer to my question, is it?
That is an answer, because it's not about the Trump presidency. What Trump did was create energy independence to the point where we were exporting oil.
Okay.
That's not what happened in previous presidential administrations.
But you criticize Joe Biden for importing oil from Russia.
The Obama administration, it lies to the Clinton administration, it lies to the Bush administration. It was both Democrat and Republican presidents that did not look out for the interest of American families. And what Trump did was put American families first. We have the capability to farm our own reserves from gas, coal, and gas.
But Darlene, if we can, Darlene, I really want to take it one issue at a time. I want to take it one issue at a time.
Sure.
So a term that's used a lot in the debate space is gish galloping, which is you throw a bunch of points at people so that they can't possibly address all of them, and they kind of get lost in the ocean of points you threw at them, without just saying, okay, let's talk about the one specific topic you're talking about. And because I have so much evidence on my side, I can, whatever we pick, okay, just gas prices or import exports from other countries, I can tell you well backed up why, whatever it is, why my side's right, why Trump was better, whatever. But if you don't really know the facts or have the evidence for what you're talking about, you can just kind of list off 10 talking points about all the issues that are somewhat related to what we're talking about. And it'll sound like you have a lot going for you when you didn't actually directly address what the person had asked you about.
Will you concede that in both 2020 and 2021, U.S. oil production exceeded consumption? Will you concede that? And then we'll get to the disagreement. Will you concede that?
Actually, it's not a concession. We did produce more oil than we consumed, but that's because we were able to export it and actually earn income back to the treasury on what we exported. Now we're no longer in an exportation phase. We are purchasing oil from other countries because we're not producing enough oil.
Let's see. I don't want to belabor it, but at the same time, I want to make sure my audience understands where we're disagreeing. In both 2020 and 2021, let's see if we can even break it down more simply, Darlene. In 2020, the U.S. used a certain amount of oil. Will you agree that we used oil in 2020?
She keeps saying that.
Of course.
Okay.
We used oil. Of
Will
course.
you agree we used oil in 2021?
We did use oil in 2021.
Good. Will you agree that in both 2020 and 2021, forget for a second about exports, we produced more oil than we used in 2020 and 2021? Are we okay on that?
Right, but
hold on, we'll get to it. But we agree so far, right?
Right.
Okay. In both 2020 and 2021, we exported some oil.
Right.
Yes. And in 2020 and 2021, we imported some oil from Russia.
We imported very little oil. I don't have the chart in front of me.
But we did import some, right?
Right, and we had to produce more oil because our oil reserves were depleted under the Obama administration. Trump put back our oil reserves during his administration. Would you agree to that?
No, I don't agree to that. But let's get to that. We'll get to the disagreement. So far, Darlene, this is great because we're really going through the nuts and bolts. We both agree that in 2020 and 2021, the U.S. produced more oil than we used. And we agree that in 2020 and 2021, we exported some oil. And we agree that in 20 and 21, we imported some oil from Russia. So what's the big criticism of what Biden did in 21? It sounds like it was exactly the same thing.
Well, actually, we didn't purchase oil to the extent in 2021 like we did in 2020 or 2019 or
so Biden was more independent. He didn't purchase as much.
Biden purchased oil in 2021 that we did not as a country purchase in 2020, 2019, 2018, and 2017.
Oh, he purchased more.
Look at the 4 years under Trump's administration. We did not purchase the oil from Russia to the extent of what Biden has done in 2021.
Okay.
That is fact.
Okay. All right. Let's talk a little about gas prices. Okay. Who's responsible for high global gas prices right now?
Who's responsible for high global gas prices? If we are producing our own oil, we can control the market behind the prices. That's economics 101.
Okay. But so right now, would you agree that gas prices are high in the United States?
They are extremely high.
Okay.
My brother is a truck driver with his own rig.
Okay.
It costs him over $1,000 to fill his truck with gas. So what does that equate to? He's going to have a higher cost for logistics to transport goods.
Got it.
That's going to translate to higher prices of cost of goods sold.
Absolutely.
Then higher prices of retail prices. And then if you're purchasing something that costs more today than it did yesterday, then you're paying higher sales tax for it.
Absolutely.
So at the end of the day, we are all paying for more.
We know how inflation works.
Based
Yes.
on the decisions of the current administration.
Let's wait. So we agree gas prices are high in the U.S. Do you agree gas prices are high in France right now?
Well, France doesn't produce their own oil.
But that wasn't my question, Darlene, is do you agree that gas prices are high in France right now?
It's painful.
They're not producing oil.
Obviously, the point that he's trying to get to is if prices are high across the world, then why is that purely Biden's fault? But also, as we've discussed extensively, and I would definitely encourage you to go back and watch my video on gas prices. If you go check out my channel, it's called "Is Joe Biden to Blame for High Gas Prices" or something. There are so many factors that affect gas prices, and very little of them are ones that presidents have any effect over. And especially in the current situation we're in, where we are in a pandemic that caused the economy to take a huge downturn, as well as people, specifically when it comes to gas, stopped traveling and stopped using oil and gas. I should have said oil and gas the first time. And so think about your personal life. You weren't driving, you weren't going on planes, etc. And so demand for gas went way down. And then pretty suddenly, people started going back to work because everything was done with orders. So that just means instead of behaviors shifting, it was like, all right, now you're allowed to do stuff. And people started using gas again at a higher level. And then demand shot back up. Also, we have a bunch of supply chain issues. Also, OPEC is withholding reserves to make back money from the pandemic. So yes, gas prices are going to go up. Biden doesn't have much effect over that, but he actually is doing some stuff right now that is trying to ameliorate this problem. But like I said, go watch that gas prices video. And if after it you still have a misunderstanding of this and think it's Biden's fault, then I don't know what to do. But I think if you watch it, it'll help you kind of address those ignorant stances.
They're at the mercy of supply and demand of countries they can purchase oil from.
Fine. But my question is, do you agree gas prices are high in France right now?
They're high everywhere all over the world.
Beautiful. So we can even skip that part.
Okay.
Is Joe Biden responsible for that?
Absolutely 100%.
How?
Why did he stop production of the Keystone pipeline? Why are we not producing the same level?
Another thing I've talked about a million times, probably like 5 times on the show. One thing conservative, and I say conservatives, I should say detached from reality right-wingers. Because there's lots of conservatives who are reasonable and they just think like, hey, let's have a smaller government or something like that. Okay, totally fine. But very like radical right-wingers will do this a lot. You ask them something, they have a list of questions that are on their talking point list, and they go, what about this? What about this? What about this? And most of the time people go, whoa, that's a lot. She must have some truth to what she's saying. But David handles this well because he's read up on a lot of this stuff.
Level of oil that we did during the Trump administration.
Okay.
There's a zero excuse on why we can't produce our own oil.
Hold on a second, though, Darlene. Let's take it a step at a time now because we want to be clear. Keystone XL pipeline. You know that Keystone XL phase 4. Well, I guess let's back up. Keystone XL is 4 phases.
Right.
3 of the phases have been up and running for years. The 4th is what we're now talking about. Agree so far?
Right.
Right.
Agree
but
so
that
far.
was 10,000 jobs.
But hold on a second. Hold on a second.
Stop that.
Wait a sec, Darlene. Wait a second.
Okay.
Do you agree that phase 4 of Keystone XL was not active when Trump was president? Trump wanted to do construction, but it wasn't active.
No, of course they weren't producing oil.
Beautiful.
They were not flowing the oil through that pipeline.
Beautiful.
That's true.
Agreed 100%.
Right.
Do you agree that the pipeline is a method of transporting oil, not producing it?
That is a method of transporting oil, but that also reduces the cost of supply and demand as well.
How?
So you have to factor that in. What do you mean how? If they can get the oil to certain markets within the United States more efficiently, that's going to reduce the cost of production.
Okay.
One of the things he doesn't address in this video that I went over in mine is, or in this interview, is not only the concept of something that transports oil compared to something that produces oil. And so then when you're saying, canceling this pipeline must have caused higher gas prices, it's kind of like, but you can still get the oil other ways. And then she's saying, yeah, but if it's less efficient, that could also cause higher gas prices. Okay, fair. But what I went over in the video is actually because of the supply chain issues right now, we have more pipeline capacity than necessary. Still now with the canceled pipeline. So we have more means to transport, like the higher capacity of transportation when it comes to oil than the amount that we're producing right now. Does that make sense to everyone? So there's no way that that pipeline could have a significant effect on gas prices if we don't need more efficiency with pipeline capacity because the production is so behind. Okay.
And transporting, correct?
Your economics 101 is a big thing for you, right? Okay.
Yes.
Do you know how much global oil production would go up if Keystone XL Phase 4 was completed?
How much it would go up in what respect? Give an example. On
Percentage-wise. So if right now we are at what we would call 100%, right now the status quo is 100%.
Right.
If Keystone XL Phase 4 goes live, how much does oil production globally go up?
I don't have the answer to that. But
It's 1%.
Well, I don't know if that's your fact, and I don't think that fact is accurate.
No, facts are facts. Facts are not opinions. A fact is a fact. Right. It would go up 1%.
So show me the evidence behind that fact, because I have not heard that it would only be 1%. I actually think that's radical liberal facts, and people assume that.
So that's the great thing about the great as in horribly devastating thing about current American politics. The left gets things wrong all the time, of course, but a lot of times, for example, in this situation, David Pakman goes, okay, I have data that shows, or I don't know what he's referring to, but it would go up 1%. And if you look at any trusted, like right now, y'all could all go, Google to find what he's kind of sourcing right there about how much production, or not production, but what was he saying? How much more oil in percentage could get transported, whatever the point he was making. And the figure he's using is 1%. And you could go find, okay, look, all these trusted media sources, and the study was done, and it would be 1%. And then she says, I don't believe that. That's your fact. I haven't heard that. I don't care if you've heard that. I care if you have contradictory, trusted evidence. And I don't mean me trusted. I mean by some trusted source. And then even if, regardless of how trusted the source is, a form of evidence that I could look into and see the methodology and realize, okay, like the way they did that study was very reasonable and well structured, and so I believe your evidence. But no, I haven't heard that, and I actually think that that's not the case. That's what I think, because my brain is big. I mean, what are we gonna do with that? So how do we find the truth? If the right wants us all to go, we get to create our own facts, and regardless of any evidence you show me, I get to believe whatever I want. Okay, then what's the possible solution to our current division? Because we can't bring facts to each other. We can't bring evidence. We can't convince each other because y'all think facts are completely subjective. So what are we supposed to do?
Those are facts. So share with us, what is your fact behind it's only being 1%?
So everybody from the NRDC to, I mean, it's, whoever you want to cite, we're talking about a 1% increase globally.
NRDC,
that
whatever,
would make a gas
up.
price difference. You know that, Darlene. Economics 101.
And actually, I don't believe in that 1%. I believe that's the narrative that they probably want everyone to kind of run with.
Okay.
So I find it hard to believe that a pipeline would only produce 1% of the world.
Pipelines don't actually produce anything. They're just transport methods. It would
Right,
allow
but-
the transport of 1%
Right.
more oil.
Right.
You just
right.
don't believe it.
Well, share the facts with your audience, share it with me, and then we can analyze it. How's that?
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay. What do you think the top tax rate should be?
The top tax rate, I believe as citizens we're double, triple, and quadruple taxed.
Okay.
So I think right now the federal tax is in the 33 percentile when you add everything together.
What do you mean percentile?
Well, when you're looking at how you do your taxes,
Yep,
right?
Yep.
It's around 30+% that comes out of your income in terms of taxes, state, federal, county, any local taxes, when you add all that up together.
Well, it depends what state you live in, how much you make, and a lot of things, right?
Correct. I was an accounting and finance major. I did my taxes for many years. So it's around that bracket.
Again, everything is anecdotal for people like her. It's, if I had a personal experience that informed me to believe something, that's it. And if I haven't yet had an experience that contradicts that, then we're good. It's so brutal, because that's not how you have a cohesive society when it comes to acceptance of information. Because believe it or not, people have wildly different experiences. Can you imagine? And so we have to understand the way that you come to broader, more universal truths and understand which facts are facts. Has to be by another method separate from just your personal experiences. And so her even saying there, like, did my tax for years. Okay, so that means your taxes were 33% combined. I guess that's the point she's making. When you combine all of her taxes, it was 33%. Do you understand that some people pay 0 federal income tax and some people pay whatever the highest is right now? 20 plus, 30 plus marginal tax rate. Just in federal income tax. So, and then some states have no federal income. Some, as far as the state taxes go, some states have no sales tax. Some states have very high sales tax. Obviously, this point's unimportant, and I'm not going to go into anything like a big major point that she's making, but this is what bothers me so much. And people look at her and think, wow, she's nailing it. She really knows what she's talking about. No, she just said she thinks that most people, like, she's making a point about how, all right, so kind of people pay, studies have shown, as in my study of the situation, that people pay around 33%. No, they pay wildly different taxes. God.
So you add Medicare tax, you add all the different taxes, about that much. And then on top of that, you have sales tax. And then on top of that, you have gas tax. And then, if you smoke, there's a cigarette tax. And then, when you die, there's taxes, everything. There's taxes on everything.
Okay.
So, and then when you die, there's an estate tax. It's 35%.
If you have more than $10.5 million.
No, actually, It's less than that.
Yeah. No, it's $10.5 million. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's less than that.
What do you think it is?
Well, there's a death tax of like if I die tomorrow, before my son could collect any assets, there's a death tax.
Did you know that starts at 11? That starts at 11. Your first 11.
Doug in the live chat says they don't make a difference between hearing something and accepting it as fact. These people are, quote, lazy thinkers who train themselves not to think, not actively train themselves. It's just the history of their educational kind of experience, and I don't mean educational like necessarily in school, but just their critical thinking practice is very lacking. Doug also says, I think there is a direct correlation between education and this kind of thinking. I find it hard to believe, or this, he's saying, quote, I find it hard to believe, is what she said. I wish someone studied between education level, age, and Trump. Well, they have. And broadly, the more educated you get, or I should say broadly, more educated people tend to be more liberal. And I do think it has to do a little bit with, or a lot with, in higher education, you learn more and more how to critically think. You learn more and more media literacy. You learn more and more how to determine the legitimacy of a fact. And as you get that education, it's harder and harder to accept the narratives from a lot of right-wing media, because all of that is based on talking points. It is just based on purely rhetoric, and kind of all personal experiences type of stuff.
$11 million. There's no federal estate tax.
There's a death tax.
No.
Yes.
Where'd you
Yes,
get
there is.
that?
Did you see that? First of all, it's called an estate tax. And she's sitting there and he goes, well, actually, technically, there's only that estate tax on people making more than I think he said $7 or $11.5 million per year. And then she goes, there's a death tax. Like, when all else fails, just go to your talking points board and go, death tax. There's a death tax. It's like,
there's a death tax that everybody goes through. When you die and you leave your assets to your heirs,
Right.
that's the tax that is going to be assessed by the government before your heirs get any money.
But this is this is wild, Darlene. You're a candidate, and it sounds like you don't know that the first $11.7 million of one's estate you only pay tax after you leave $11.7 million to your heirs. You didn't know that, did you?
If it's 11.7, how is it that because I deal with seniors all day long.
Okay.
I'm the
Here we go.
Medicaid, okay?
Okay.
And I had a client that only had
okay, you had a client, good.
$250,000, and her estate was hit with a death tax before her children collected it. So how did that happen with her?
Maybe it was at the state level, I don't know, but federally there's an 11.7 million. But hold on. There's your first 11.7 million, there's no tax federally.
Right, on the federal level. Okay.
But you didn't know that 2 minutes ago, right?
Right, but that's on the federal level.
Fair.
So I deal with seniors all day long.
Okay.
That's what I do for the last 11 years. And I've heard way too many. As a matter of fact, this is the biggest concern that seniors have brought to my attention.
Yep.
That they have to set up a trust, which costs $3,000 typically to set up, about $2,500 to $3,000.
Yeah.
So that they could try to protect their assets and not be subject to that death tax before they leave their children any money.
Now, wouldn't it be the right thing to do as someone advising seniors to let them know that their first 11.7 million are exempt?
Well, I'm not a tax advisor, so that's not up to me legally to share that information with them. I sell Medicare health insurance, so I'm not going to give advice
Fair.
That has nothing to do with my license.
I think that's responsible, Darlene.
Yes.
Okay, Darlene, listen, this has been incredibly illuminating, and I can't thank you enough. I think we've had a number of disagreements.
So there we go. Yeah, I just wanted to go over that because there is so many important takeaways from that interview, but then just a lot of conversations that you'll come across between especially right-wingers who are running for a political office, because they not only fall for the right-wing media talking points and ways of thinking, but they also have to like toe this weird Trump line. I was gonna say party line, but it's more of a Trump line where they can't admit to basic facts or Trump's gonna come out and attack them. I mean, we saw Louis Gohmert, I'm pretty sure it was him. Some Republican who's in the House currently, I think it was Louis Gohmert. But if not, it was one of them, running for Senate. And he got Trump's endorsement. And then in a speech, he just said, I think we should try to move forward. Let's not look back so much at the 2020 election. He didn't say the election wasn't stolen. He didn't say any of that. He literally just said, let's look forward and worry less about it. He got booed, and then Trump revoked his endorsement. So people like her, even if maybe on some things she does know the facts, she's not going to be able to admit to it if she wants any chance of getting the MAGA vote, which is the base of the Republican Party. So very interesting stuff. We got to keep an eye on this. And in our personal lives, we have to help deprogram these people and understand that, listen, there is actual facts. It's not all up to your interpretation or your own wants and ambitions about what the facts should be. There's actual reality, and we can all tap into that. So David Pakman did a really good job in this interview as well. and I think we learned a lot.